You thought you had handled it, set boundaries, stayed silent, walked away, even cut ties completely. You switched jobs, changed your circle, shrank your world, turned off notifications, deleted numbers, blocked social media. For a few days, you felt lighter. Then another face appeared, another situation replayed, another phrase pierced the same old wound. Once again, you were forced to defend, to explain, to strain yourself just to stay calm in the middle of sudden waves. And you asked, why does this keep happening? I already walked away. The hard truth is this: you've been dealing with the wrong thing. You thought the problem was them, so you swapped people, places, circumstances, but the root isn't out there. The root is in the way you let the outside world dictate the state of your inner world. When your strategy is built on avoidance, all you've done is change the door through which the storm enters without ever changing the roof that lets it in. Avoidance is survival instinct, not the art of living. It keeps you safe for a moment, but it doesn't make you stronger. It tricks you into believing peace means no one bothers me, when true peace means even when bothered, I remain unmoved like a mountain. Toxic people don't disappear just because you wish them away. They exist in every workplace, every family, every crossroads. They change faces, they change tones, but the mechanism is the same. They probe your weak points to feed on the energy of your reaction. If your joy still depends on compliments and your sadness still depends on criticism, they have the key. If your worth still needs validation, they hold the remote control. If you still cling to the hope that one day they'll understand, they've already tied an invisible string around your mind. That's why you're exhausted. You're fighting shadows while leaving the light on behind them. You've walked away from one relationship but continue to narrate your story with the words they planted in you. You've changed your environment but carried the unfinished conversation inside. You say, I'm fine, yet your heart still races at a voice that sounds like theirs. You thought you won when you left. In reality, you only postponed the battle, moving it from outside to inside. Awakening begins when you dare to ask a different question. What within me keeps leaving the door open for them to enter? Not to blame yourself, but to see the mechanism clearly. Maybe it's the need to prove your kindness by enduring too long. Maybe it's the habit of over-explaining to those who have no intention of listening. Maybe it's the fear of being labeled selfish for putting yourself first. Be honest, you've used boundaries like fences but never built a foundation. You've changed your schedule but never upgraded your emotional immune system. You've muted others, but not the inner critic in your head. And so, with just one sharp test, the whole system collapses again. Awareness doesn't ask you to reject the world. It invites you back to your center. That center needs no approval, doesn't swing with praise or blame, doesn't scramble to win a conversation designed for you to lose. That center knows when silence is strength, when leaving is liberation, when no can stand without a lengthy explanation. Most of all, it knows the ultimate strategy isn't to eliminate all toxic people, but to become the kind of person who is simply unavailable for their games. You'll notice a subtle shift. Instead of asking, how do I make them change? You ask, how do I stop being pulled in? Instead of trying to prove you're right, you choose to be aligned with yourself. Instead of waiting for closure from them, you create closure within. When the question changes, the path changes. You no longer run, you build. You no longer guard the door, you strengthen the foundation. You no longer patch holes, you redesign the ship. And then the strange thing happens. The behaviors that once shook you now sound like distant noise. The people who once hooked you with a single jab now touch only emptiness. The situations that once kept you awake now become breathing exercises. Inhale, exhale. Awareness doesn't make them vanish, but it strips them of power. It doesn't promise you a life without wind, but it gives you steady feet to walk through any storm. And when you see this clearly, that's when you truly begin not another fight, but a life where peace is no longer something to defend, but the very essence you carry. Toxic people are not as powerful as you think. They don't possess some special force, nor do they truly control your life. What they rely on is a simple psychological trick, exploiting your reactions. Like a virus, which cannot destroy on its own but multiplies. When the immune system is weak, toxic people can only drain you when your emotional doors are left wide open. Their only weapon is your reaction. An angry glare, a defensive reply, an emotional outburst. These are the very fuels they live on. They don't want solutions. They want chaos. They don't seek peace. They crave control. Every time you get angry, you lose. Every time you over-explain, you step deeper into their trap. Every time you get flustered, you hand them proof that they've found your weak spot. And in that moment, they feel powerful. Notice how toxic people rarely attack head on. They don't need external strength. They feed on your inner fragility. They can use a seemingly harmless comment to stir an old fear. They can fake concern while hiding control. They can plant guilt to make you believe you're responsible for things that were never yours to carry. And your own reactions, confusion, guilt, anger, become the invisible chains. Here's the uncomfortable truth. They can do nothing without your permission. They have no real power except what you hand over through your responses. That's why they keep pressing your buttons, keep testing your limits. They need confirmation that the old strategies still work. Every time you bite back, they know they still occupy space in your mind. But when you remain calm and steady, they grow restless. When you don't waver, they get confused. When you don't react, they panic because their entire script depends on controlling you. If you stop playing along, they lose their stage. And when the spotlight dies, they're forced to face their own emptiness, the very thing they fear most. Here lies the paradox. The calmer you stay, the stronger you are. The less you react, the harder you are to control. Toxic people can mock, insult, manipulate, but none of it matters if you don't reward them with your emotions. They are like fire starters whose flames only burn if you keep adding wood. Without fuel, the fire dies. Without reaction, their power dissolves. Many mistake non-reaction for weakness. They believe silence means surrender, or not answering means defeat, but intentional silence is strength. It's not avoidance, it's refusing to play a game designed for you to lose. You don't need to prove yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to explain yourself to someone who already wrote their conclusion. You don't need to waste energy on a battle built to exhaust you. When you understand this, your entire approach shifts. Instead of asking, how do I make them stop? You ask, how do I stop being affected? Instead of fighting outward, you strengthen your inner immunity. And once you master your response, they have nothing left to use. Remember this, toxic people hold no true power. Their survival depends on your emotional reactions. They exist like parasites feeding on the energy you release. When you no longer grant them access, they become harmless. And the moment you realize their only weapon lies in your hands, you reclaim all of your power. The power of toxic people doesn't lie in them, it lies in how you respond. They're like actors who only survive through their audience. As long as you sit in the crowd, clapping or booing, they have a reason to keep performing. But when you walk away from the seat, when you stop reacting, their entire stage collapses. This is the law of power reversal. You reclaim your strength by refusing to give them the reaction they crave. Watch closely. Every time you remain calm, what do toxic people do? They raise their voice, they push the story further, they search for a sharper spear to pierce your defense. They escalate not because they are stronger, but because they are losing control. When they see the old tricks no longer work, panic sets in. And that's when you know you're winning. Most people assume that to win, you must fight back, argue, or prove yourself right. But with toxic people, the more you react, the more you lose. Every explanation is a trap, every outburst a gift you hand them. They don't want the truth, they want your energy. And only when you stop giving it do you break the cycle. Stopping your reaction doesn't mean denying your real feelings. You can still feel hurt, annoyed, or shaken. But instead of handing those emotions to them, you keep them within yourself. You acknowledge the waves rising, then choose not to let them dictate your actions. That is strength. Recognizing the trap without stepping into it, seeing the attack without letting it strike your center. Each time you don't react, you retrain your mind. Every moment of calm teaches your brain a new path. You are no longer a slave to provocation. Like a muscle, self-mastery grows with practice. At first, it feels heavy, like swallowing a stone. But slowly, you discover a quiet joy, the joy of no longer being controlled from the outside. You begin to notice a subtle shift. Words that once stole your sleep now sound like passing wind. Manipulations that once confused you now reveal their emptiness. Arguments that once drained your energy become exercises in steadiness. And you realize strength isn't in winning debates, it's in refusing to be dragged into them. Not reacting is not surrender, it's cutting off their supply. They are like fire starters who thrive as long as you throw in more wood. But when you stop feeding the flames, the fire dies. No arguments, no anger, no explanations, and suddenly they have nothing left to hold on to. When they see every attempt is futile, they collapse into the emptiness you've created. This is the reversal of power. All along, you thought they held control because they were louder, harsher, or more cunning. But the truth is, power has always been in your hands. The moment you don't react, they lose their weapon. The moment you stay calm, they trap themselves in their own chaos. You don't need to shout, argue, or prove. Your steady silence is the ultimate victory. Remember, you cannot control others, but you can always control yourself. And that control is the strongest shield you'll ever hold. When you refuse to react, you don't just reclaim your power, you send a clear message. I am no longer a puppet in this game. And from that moment on, the power reverses. True strength is not shouting louder, striking back faster, or winning every argument. True strength is the ability to remain calm in the midst of chaos. People often confuse power with the ability to dominate others, but the greatest power is the ability not to let others dominate you. Someone may try to manipulate, mock, or provoke you, but if you remain unmoved, they have nothing to hold on to. Imagine standing in a room filled with shouting voices. Everyone is trying to impose their opinion, everyone fighting to be right. In the middle of all that noise, one person sits, still steady, unshaken, untouched by the storm of words. Who is the strongest in that room? Not the one shouting the loudest, but the one whose calm silence commands attention. Serenity is a form of quiet authority that toxic people can never comprehend. Toxic people can only thrive when you surrender your inner world. They cannot reach you unless you open the door for them, and that door is your untamed emotions. A single insult might be harmless to one person, but cut deeply into another. The difference lies in how much mastery you have over your inner world. When you realize that emotions are not something others create, but something you allow within yourself, you begin to take the wheel of your life back into your own hands. Mastering the inner world does not mean you no longer feel. You still experience pain, discomfort, or hurt. But instead of letting those feelings dictate your actions, you learn to observe them, letting them pass like clouds across the sky. Toxic people want to turn you into their puppet, with your impulses as the strings they pull. When you cut those strings, their game ends. Many fear that staying calm means being weak or submissive. In truth, it is calmness that places you in the highest position. Think of a sailor at sea. When the waves rise, the inexperienced one flails with his oars, fighting the current, only to be dragged under. But the seasoned sailor does the opposite. He relaxes, rides the swell, and waits for the right moment to steer. True strength is not forcing the waves to stop, but keeping your balance so you are never drowned. In life, toxic people are those sudden waves. You cannot stop the ocean, but you can learn how to stand steady. When you hold your peace, you not only protect yourself, you radiate a power that others sense instinctively. They realize their tricks have lost their effect. Their words no longer carry weight. Their manipulation no longer finds an opening. And in that instant, the balance of power shifts to you. Inner mastery gives you another gift: freedom from living in constant defense. When you know you can withstand anyone, you don't need to shrink your life, avoid relationships, or fear new environments. Peace is no longer a fragile shelter. You hide in it, becomes a mobile strength you carry wherever you go. Most importantly, when you master your inner world, you are free. No longer a slave to praise, no longer imprisoned by judgment, no longer defined by approval. You know your worth, and no glance, no word, no action from the outside can redefine it. Remember, the strongest person in the room is not the loudest, it is the calmest. The true winner is not the one who brings others down, but the one who never allows anyone to bring them down. When you anchor yourself in inner stillness, you hold a strength no toxic person can ever touch. One of the biggest traps that keeps you stuck with toxic people is the hope that one day they'll understand. You convince yourself that if you explain clearly enough, they'll see you're not at fault. You think that if you're patient enough, kind enough, forgiving enough, they'll become different. You hope that if you love them enough, they'll eventually treat you with respect. But the harsh reality is this: they will not change. Not because they cannot, but because they do not want to. Toxic people are not seeking truth. They don't care about fairness, nor do they long for a healthy relationship. What they crave is control. Every argument, every blame, every manipulation serves one purpose only: to keep you weak so they can remain in power. Reconciliation doesn't interest them because reconciliation means they lose the very energy they're draining from you. Notice this: you can present undeniable evidence and they will still deny it. You can speak with the gentlest words, and they'll still twist it into an attack. You can spend hours explaining, and they'll still play the victim, painting you as the one at fault. Why? Because for them, the issue was never about truth, it was always about power. And in that game, the harder you try to prove yourself, the deeper you sink. Accepting the truth that they will never change is painful but necessary. Painful because it confronts our deepest human need, the need to be seen, heard, and understood. Difficult because we've invested so much time, love, and hope into the relationship. To admit that all effort has been in vain feels like admitting loss. But it is a loss you must accept in order to regain your freedom. Understand this: every time you try once more, hope once more, you are feeding the cycle. Toxic people do not change simply because you wish they would. They don't awaken just because you sacrifice more. And the sooner you face this truth, the sooner you cut the invisible chains that keep you bound. What hurts you most is not what they do, it is the illusion that they will be different. That illusion keeps you staying too long, tolerating too much, giving too much. That illusion turns you into a puppet, always waiting for an ending that will never come. Awakening means seeing reality as it is, who they are, what they want, and the fact that they have no intention of changing. When you release this illusion, a strange sense of relief emerges because you no longer have to chase their validation. You no longer waste energy fixing what cannot be fixed. You no longer wait for an apology or recognition from someone who never intended to give it. You realize that peace doesn't come from them changing, it comes from you changing the way you see. This hard truth may leave you shaken, but it also hands you back your power, because when you stop waiting for them to change, you start focusing on yourself. You stop waiting outside and you begin building inside. You stop hoping they will treat you well one day and you choose today to treat yourself well. Remember this: toxic people don't need another chance. They need to lose the chance they've been exploiting all along. They don't need more time to prove themselves. They need you to stop giving them time to manipulate. They don't need you to sacrifice more. They need you to stop and declare that you deserve better. Accepting that they will never change is your declaration to yourself. I will no longer place my future in someone else's hands. And that is the true beginning of freedom. Escaping toxic people isn't just about physical distance. You can block their number, delete their contact, stop seeing them. But if in your mind you're still giving them space, you're not free yet. They don't need to be present in your daily life to control you. As long as you replay, analyze, or argue with them in your head, they're still there. Cutting off the energy isn't just about not meeting them, it's about not feeding them. Think about it. Even when you're no longer in touch, you still replay old arguments, rehearse what you wish you had said, or reconstruct every word they threw at you. Those imagined conversations drain as much energy, if not more, than the real ones. Because now, the toxic person doesn't even need to make an effort. You're doing the work for them, doubting yourself, blaming yourself, punishing yourself. This is why cutting the inner supply is more important than anything else. Cutting the inner energy means no longer waiting for closure from them, no longer hoping for an apology, a confession, or the day they finally wake up. When you stop expecting that, you stop giving them permission to keep appearing in your mind. You no longer need closure from anyone because you've learned how to create it for yourself. It also means no more explaining. Every time you think, if I'd said it this way, maybe they would have understood, you're still fueling the fire. Toxic people don't lack explanations, they lack honesty. And you are not responsible for giving them what they never wanted in the first place. Every justification is a thread that keeps you tied. Only silence allows that thread to fall away. Cutting the external energy is the more visible first step. Limiting contact, avoiding situations where the same pattern repeats. This is not weakness, it's self-protection. You don't need to prove you're strong enough to stand in the flames. You just need to know you don't belong there. But remember, outer distance is only the beginning. If you don't also cleanse the inside, that space will be filled with memory, anger, and regret. Toxic people survive on having an audience. They need someone to manipulate, to provoke, to confirm their script is working. When you stop being the audience, their show collapses, just like a fire. Without air, without wood, it burns out on its own. What matters is your consistency. No stepping back into the theater, no secretly watching from the balcony, no wondering how are they doing now, because the moment you still care, you're still feeding energy. Cutting off energy isn't a one-time act, it's a practice. You may catch yourself thinking about them, feeling angry, or sinking into memory. That doesn't mean you failed. It just means you need to practice again. Every time you return to your inner calm, you strengthen yourself. Every time you choose to release instead of cling, you're building a new habit. And when you truly cut the energy, they begin to fade. Their name no longer makes your heart race. Memories of them feel like old chapters. You can turn the page without getting stuck. They're no longer ghosts haunting your mind, no longer the reason you question your worth. They become nothing more than a piece of your past, stripped of any power over your present or future. Cutting off the energy both outside and inside is your declaration. I will no longer feed what once drained me. From that moment, your energy returns to you. You start using it to build, to love, to create. No longer sucked dry by a black hole, you become your own source of light. Toxic people believe they've broken you. They think the wounds they've inflicted will forever weigh you down, keeping your head bowed. They want you to live in anger, in bitterness, trapped in endless inner arguments with ghosts of the past. But what they never expect is this: the very pain they caused can become the material from which you grow stronger. Pain is not an ending, it's the beginning of a new shape of strength. Remember the times you thought you couldn't get back up, yet you did. The days you thought you couldn't move forward, yet you kept walking. Those wounds taught you lessons no classroom ever could. How to tell the difference between a real smile and a mask. How to see beneath appearances to the motives within. How to place your own worth above the fleeting approval of others. Toxic people never took your light away. They only revealed that your light was always meant to be protected by you alone. Every insult can become a reminder that you are stronger than the cheap labels others throw at you. Every betrayal can become a chance to place your trust in the right hands and withdraw it from toxic ones. Every time you are underestimated can fuel you to prove to yourself, not to them, that you are worth far more than they imagined. When you learn to turn pain into fuel, you step into a new level of freedom. Toxic people hope you'll stay stuck in the past, but the sweetest revenge is not hatred, it's living a life beyond their reach. It's not about getting even, it's about rising higher. You don't need them to admit you've succeeded, because your peace and your success speak louder than any words. They wanted you weak, yet you became steady. They wanted you broken, yet you stood taller. They wanted you to remain their puppet, but you cut the strings and became your own master. Turning pain into power doesn't mean denying what happened. You still acknowledge it, you still remember, but instead of letting it control you, you let it teach you. You harvest wisdom from it, carry it forward as strength. Like a scar, it doesn't vanish, but instead of making you ugly, it becomes proof that you lived, endured, and overcame. True strength comes when you realize no one can define you but yourself. Toxic people can hand you the test, but your response writes the score. And when you choose to turn wounds into fuel, you transform their test into your launch pad. From that moment, when you look back, you don't see yourself as small, you see yourself as seasoned. You don't see only injustice, you see the wisdom you've gained. You don't see loss, you see the foundation of your new strength. What toxic people never realize is that they've helped shape a tougher, wiser version of you. They wanted you broken, but they forged your bones harder. They wanted you faithless, but you learned where to place your trust. They wanted you to doubt yourself, but you learned how to affirm your worth without asking for permission. That's the beautiful paradox of life. From darkness, you find light. From destruction, you find power. From pain, you find yourself. And when you stand there, you no longer need revenge. Your existence, your calm gaze, your steady steps forward, these are answers louder than any confrontation. You don't need to prove anything to those who hurt you. You only need to prove to yourself that nothing and no one can destroy you. Every steady step you take, every smile you keep, every peaceful night's sleep you reclaim is your declaration. I have turned pain into power. The ultimate victory is not making toxic people admit their faults, nor is it forcing them to apologize or change. The ultimate victory is realizing you no longer need any of that. You understand your life was never in their hands and your peace never depended on them. The moment you step out of the game they created, you've already won. Toxic people want you to believe they are the center of your story. They want to be the wound you can't forget, the shadow haunting your mind, the scar that forever defines you. But the truth is, they only play the role you allowed them to. When you stop thinking about them, stop giving them energy, stop letting them dictate your moods, they disappear. No drama, no revenge, they simply lose importance. The ultimate victory is when their name no longer stings. When you can revisit memories without shaking, without anger, without needing to prove a point. When they become nothing more than a chapter you've turned, no longer able to affect the page you're writing now. That freedom doesn't come from them, it comes from reclaiming the power you once gave away. Remember, your true opponent was never them. Your true opponent was your former self, the one who endured too much, who sacrificed just to please others, who chased validation in all the wrong places. The ultimate victory is becoming someone you refuse to return to. Every time you choose peace over chaos, you win. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you win. Every time you choose self-respect over begging for recognition, you win. Toxic people hope you'll remain stuck in their cycle. But now you've stepped out and they have no way back in. They may try to drag you down with insults, hatred, or gossip, but none of it matters when you're no longer tuned to their frequency. You've risen to a level they cannot reach, and that distance itself is the loudest answer. The ultimate victory is also turning pain into fuel to build a brighter life. You turn insults into stepping stones, rejection into motivation, disrespect into inspiration, not to prove it to them, but to prove it to yourself. Every step forward, every success you achieve, is living proof they never held real power. In the end, the greatest revenge is not making them suffer, it's living so well that they have no place in the world you've created. They thought they'd broken you, but in truth, they handed you the very lessons that made you unbreakable. They thought they'd leave scars that haunted you, but instead, they became the chisels that carved you into a stronger version of yourself. The ultimate victory is living free, unshackled by memory, untouched by bitterness, unbound by the need for approval. You smile not because they've changed, but because you move forward not because you beat them, but because you've conquered yourself. And then you see it clearly. They were never truly important. They were only a short chapter. You are the book. They were only the test. You are the result. They were only the shadow. You are the light. This is the ultimate victory. When nothing can touch you, nothing can control you, and nothing needs to be avenged because you've risen so far above that they exist only as a faint name in the past.